Like everyone has Instagram and then that links bro. You subscribe to the channel for the answers. I would Oh yes. Google Meet. Such
Right. Okay, so starting from the basics of UI UX before I go into its laws, even though it's used very often close together, like UI UX, people just think it's content. It is content, but there's a lot of work that goes behind. So UI, UX are two separate terms and mean separate things. UX is how the user experiences your product, whatever that is, whether it be a web app or actually in general, any experience, how the user experiences it is what user experience is. UI is not exactly UX, but UI is the actual means through which you're going to experience that. Basically, what it means is it studies UX to create a smooth interface for users to interact with whatever app you're using. That is the basic definition, but there is something I will add at the end. So there is this website called Laws of UX. I really like it. If you want to see more laws, which are actually pretty helpful, you can go back there. But the site that I'm looking right now, I think it's applied everywhere. So it's on like you can. So this will make sense once I explain them. Okay, thing about these laws is that they're tiny changes and they seem very minimal. But those changes are what makes the user interface that much better to use. So keep this in mind for whenever you make your own user interface. Starting with Hick's law, it says the amount of time required for a person to move a pointer to a target area, that is a button or something, is a function of the distance to the target divided by the size of the target. Now that sounds complicated, but in basic terms, what it's saying is the farther the button or whatever it is from the pointer, and the larger it is, plays a part in how fast you can click that. So there is this person who the law is named after called Paul Fitz. What he realized was that, for example, in World War II, the design of aircraft actually cause a lot of human error. So instead of human error being because of themselves, sometimes the error was created because of poor design. That's why he decided it's important you properly analyze what you're doing with when you're designing. A few things to keep in mind with this law. Um, kind of obvious. The convention of buttons being larger for it to be easier to click comes from this law basically. And there's this thing called an infinite target button. So we're talking about buttons now, right? And this. We're talking about buttons and okay, so have you seen a taskbar in your OS? There's an example. Right. Mac OS. Or actually in Windows. The sidebar here or this up, whatever it is. It is an infinite existence. It goes across the screen. And that way what you're doing is you're improving the like risk of overshooting the target. And by overshooting, I mean, for example, if you have a pointer like that, if you go there and it was an infinite edge, you have a chance of not hitting the icon you want. And for it may seem like a simple thing, but what really happens is that you're not able to pick it and it just becomes annoying. So that's just one point. Another thing I mentioned with buttons, this whole laws about buttons, you should always include labels when you're using an icon. So, for example, if you have a menu button, it's always better to have a menu symbol and a button because then you're wasting less time figuring out what that icon means and it just makes for a better user experience. Yeah, this is just another example. In behaviour, you can see the three dots up here. When you click again, you here. That's kind of not convenient. If you were somewhere near the icon itself, it would have been much more convenient because you're at that already. So any option you want to pick. You can see details. So whenever you're, yeah, this is a better example. The delete button here, when you click it, the option is directly above. So that way, it's better user experience. Right. So the second law is Jacob's law. Says that most people spend a lot of time on their site, which is why you should keep the site, like the design of your site, similar to what is already conventional design. So something interesting about this is that when you're learning the layout of a website, there is a learning curve. It goes up first. You're learning a lot, you're getting used to the platform, and then it becomes a plateau. Means you stop learning more often. You're used to this. So let's say you're making a new website, right? And you try to choose a new format or layout. You're competing with something that already exists, a normal website structure. You're competing with that. So this old website has already reached the plateau. But this new one is going to take a while to reach that same plateau. So while a new website will be novel, an old one is much easier for users to use because they're already used to it. That's basically what Jacob's law is saying. An example of when this was used is in YouTube. 2017, although it's not that beautiful, they changed a bit of the UI. You can see clearly. So what YouTube did is that they gave an option to the users to use the new UI a little bit and see if they like it. If not, they can switch back to the old one. So this way, you're giving the power to the users to see what's comfortable with them. And that way, you're creating a better user experience. The third law, law of proximity, is very obvious. Objects that are near or proximate to each other tend to be grouped together. So whenever you're making a web, website, whatever, anything you want to be taken as related, when you put them together, when the user sees it, they connect it immediately in their heads. Because anything they see together, the human mind is designed to see anything that's nearby as related. We actually do this very commonly. For example, in Google search results, different links, you can see all the related information, links, whatever it is. They're all grouped into chunks. So if they had lessons spaced together, or if they were just randomly haphazard together, it wouldn't make much sense. But now at one view, you're able to see links are related to each other now. We do this in our paragraphs as well. For example, when you're writing, this is not just UI. When you're writing a paragraph, you start with the paragraph heading and then the paragraph. That is in itself law of proximity. So it is applied everywhere. Okay, another thing, when people look at options, an example, when people look at options, they tend to see the first option and then assume what the rest of the options are. So if you want a better experience, it's better to keep related options together. The mistake that this website did is that previous here and next there, which is a little weird, to be honest. What would be best would be like next here. So that, those buttons are related to what the note is, and these buttons are for going for previous and next. That way, the law of proximity makes more sense, and it's much smoother to use. Peak and dual. Okay, this was my favorite. People judge an experience largely based on how they felt at its peak and its end, rather than the total sum or average of every moment. So there's this one research that I read about. It's a 1993 paper that says more pain is better with a better ending. That will make sense now. So what happened is a research experiment happened where people were learning the behavior of human beings. What happened is they got a bunch of people and they made all of them put their hand in 14 degrees C water for 60 seconds. That's one experience. The second experience is they do the same thing for longer, 1 minute 30 seconds. But after that, they get to put their hand in 16 degrees C water, which is hotter, for just 10 seconds. When asked which experience they prefer more, they said the second one. They kept their hand in cold water for much longer, but the end was hot water. which is a better feeling at the end. So that says that people think of the most emotional moments in any experience that they have. Here they chose the second option because they get to have a better ending. That can be applied in UX as well. For example, this is a website called Native. Whatever error, whatever process is going on here, they use the empathy of animations like that high-fi thing. So that's like the peak emotional moment of that entire process. You're trying to see if your process went well or not. So you're handling that well and letting them remember what it felt like at that moment and giving them a better end experience. It can be seen also in Uber and actually any rideshare app. Any time that you're waiting for something, it says, yes, it's being processed. So you're letting them know, like, there is security, there is things that's happening. And in the end, you're giving a better experience. This is the last law, Miller's law. The average person can only keep 7-ish items in their working memory. Now, this is more about the cluttering of that website, of whatever interface. If it is all blended together, nothing will make sense. You will not be able to make proper sense of what you're seeing. It's better to have 7-ish, plus or minus, 7 main things that are there on the website so that the users know what they're looking at and they can make complete sense and have a better experience. This can be seen in news articles. You can see each component screen is grouped into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. These exact groups, when you take one look at it, you can make complete sense. Like this is the bar where you can see all the topics. This is the main screen, related stuff. It makes sense without any much effort, which is what you're aiming for at the end. A much smoother experience where no one has to put too much effort. That's what it makes people focus on what's important rather than trying to figure out something new. One thing that I really like about these laws is that they're not like kept entirely to UI. You can see them everywhere. Now, what I explained is how you would usually do it on a web app or a website, let's say. But you can see these laws anywhere you look. For example, Fitt's law. It said that target target size and distance matters, right? That you can see in interior design. For example, if I were to place a trash can in a room, what would be better? A smaller one that's less accessible or one that's nearby, properly accessible and large enough? Second option, right? That's basically what Fitt's law is. And it applies to more than just UI. Let's take another example. Hmm. Right, Jacob's law. It said that people are more used to what they've already seen than something new. Now, let's take an example. This is a photo I took myself. The thing about this is it has really bright colors and it's pretty natural, right? This is one photo. But let's say I wanted to bring out the colors a little bit more. There's this. I increase the saturation a lot on this, but the color is popping up. Now, in comparison to this and this, what looks better? This one, right? That's because these are the natural colors that we're used to seeing, which is why Jacob's law applies here. Taste in general, things that are more known seem a lot better to look at. This could look good if you're going for a different concept, but in general, you're used to colors like this, which is why it looks better, is my point. Where else, right? Miller's law. It said that you can only keep 7 objects in your memory at once, right? That just basically is telling you not to keep things too cluttered. You can observe this anywhere. And so in any social situation, if anything is too crowded, for example, you do feel that it's not as great as something that's organized, right? That's one thing. Uh, Again, another application of Jacob's law, it said that things that are familiar are better, right? If you see things in metro stations train stations, airports. The setup is exactly the same. The ticket counter, the turnstile, whatever it is, it's all the same in all metro stations, and that's what leads to a smoother user experience. It doesn't apply only to UI. User experience is anything and everything you are doing right now. So in the starting, I said that UI UX is basically just interface and how you experience things. One thing I did miss out though, both of them do something with storytelling. So this whole thing that I'm saying, what you're trying to do is you're telling a story. When you're making a website, you're telling the story of your product. When you use these tips, you're trying to get your story across better. It's like, and even without the applications of UI, that picture that I showed of the sky, it's telling you the story of the situation at that point. In a metro station, when you see everything standing in line or in order, it's telling you the